Hey, so I was thinking lately I could use some practice with my shapes, so I went ahead and built this shape sorter toy. No, just kidding. It's for my daughter. She likes it so far. I hope you guys do too. Stick around and I will go ahead and show you how I made this. It's a mix of classic woodworking and our new laser cutter slash engraver machine. But there are some ways to cut these shapes without a laser as well. For the base, I'm going to start with this off-cut piece of ash that I have hanging around the shop. I've been tripping over it, so time to use it. I'm going to run this through my planer and just get it nice and even on both sides. I don't need the jointer, I can leave it wide and just go straight to the planer because it's already close enough to square. It's not really bowed or cupped or anything like that. So next I'm going to get the table saw out and we are going to go ahead and rip this thing in half lengthwise. So I didn't choose any particular height other than one that I knew would look good and definitely be big enough for me to punch a hole out of the front eventually and retrieve the little toys that you drop through. So just getting the saw set up now. First I'm going to put a nice clean edge on either side of this piece of ash. That way it'll grab my fence and run through the saw super smooth when I go to cut it to width. So I usually run one side, flip it, run the other side, and then flip it again and run that first side one more time to get it super smooth. So you see I'm taking that side now, putting it up against the fence, and ripping this to about 4.5 inches wide. So there's my piece, nice and square, ready for the bandsaw. I'm going to flip this on edge and resaw this actually about right down the middle. I'm aiming for around 3/8 inches. I wanted this toy to be sturdy but not overly heavy or bulky. So that's what I landed on. I figure after it's milled up that should be a good thickness to work with. So I'm playing the bandsaw banjo right now, trying to dial this blade tension in by ear. And I got it way too loose. I got to flip the piece, retension the blade, and run it through again. So that's what you see now. It's going through a lot smoother. The blade isn't drifting at all. So luckily I caught that other piece before I went too far, so I won't lose too much thickness on this. I'm just taking my time here to finish the cut safely and smoothly, trying to keep that board against the fence and also not chop my hand off because I had already started the cut from the other side. Over to the planer, and I'm going to plane them both down to the thickness of whatever the thinner one ends up at once it's clean on both sides. So I'm trying to remove as little material during this process as possible so I can end up with a piece that's thick enough. So after many passes, these are looking really nice, a little under 3/8 inches, I think. And we're going to bring them over to the table saw, but now we need to get rid of the fence. So let's move that off to the side, and we are going to bust out the Craig jig. I've been loving this thing. It's been giving me really accurate cuts, and that swinging stop fence makes things really, really quick. Makes repeatable cuts really easy to dial in. So I'm taking one of these pieces and seeing how wide I have to play with. Looks like close to 19 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and plan for this to be about 9 inches across. So final dimensions for the bottoms, sides, and top will be about 4.5 by 9 inches. Just taking a moment to make sure that my little dial on the gauge itself is still dialed in. So here we go. It's really easy to repeat and get the same exact width on these. Taking the other piece, doing the same thing. So now we got 4 pieces cut to 9 inches. So the plan for this is I'm going to cut rabbets on the outside of the bottom piece, and I'm going to use the width of the piece itself to determine how far away my router fence should be. You'll see me doing that here, just lining the blade up and using the thickness of the workpiece to determine how far the fence is away. So now I'm running that on all 4 sides, short, long, and one more cleanup pass. That's what we ended up with. Nice rabbet on all 4 sides. So we should now go ahead and sand all that fraying off. Make sure that's not going to get in the way when we go to do the glue up here. So there we are, the bottom is done. Now I'm going to use that to get an idea of where to set my table saw fence to start cutting the sides down to length. In hindsight, I probably should have rabbeted the sides as well for an even easier glue up, but no big deal. I actually cut these wrong at first, but I just slowly dialed them in to fit exactly how they needed to.
So apologies for a little bit of missed footage. I took one of those pieces, cut it 9 inches, brought it over to the miter gauge again, and cut him down to two 4.5 inch pieces.
So you can see we got everything cut to size here. This thing fits together pretty well without glue, so hopefully the glue up process won't be too difficult. I'm going to need every trigger clamp in the shop for this glue up, I think. So here I am over at the cleat wall just grabbing all trigger clamps available. Except for the super long ones, but who knows, I might have to bust those out too. Oh yeah, we're going to need that guy. Yeah, that one. Alright, so I brought over a couple little squares to make sure that I'm keeping everything in the proper alignment during the glue up as I set the clamps. So go ahead and put glue around each side of the rabbet here.
So right about now I'm realizing I should have just left those side pieces as wide as they were and cut the same rabbet on them. That would have fit together a little better and helped me to glue this up a little squarer. Not that I ended up with any real error, because you'll see I'm going to use these squares to make sure that everything's all lined up. It was just a little finicky and probably took a little longer than it needed to doing it this way. The joinery on the end looks kind of nice though. If I had done that last rabbet, not sure that you would have been able to see how everything's joined together as well. So there's that, but you can see I'm just taking my time here, keeping everything all squared up, using my trigger clamps, going back and forth with them, adjusting the amount of tension, getting everything just right. I don't need too much clamp pressure on this piece because everything's nice and accurate, nice and squared up already. It wants to sit together square, so we really just need to bring it together enough so that it doesn't slide during the glue up and it has good contact. Try to get any gaps out of there. So I actually need more clamps, is what I learned after gluing this box up. I didn't have enough to clamp the piece down vertically, like top to bottom, and pull into that bottom piece's rabbets as much as I wanted to. I think I need F-style clamps to really do that for me. But you can see I'm making it work. I'm doing the best I can here. I did have some gaps on the bottom that you'll see I ended up noticing, and I did find some clamps. I found a C-clamp, and I found this other beefy trigger clamp and put some cawls underneath, or at least one of them. Yeah, there's a cawl right there. Yeah, I didn't end up with too much of a gap anywhere. Not as much clamping pressure as I would like, but it's okay. So I went scrapwood hunting again and turned up with this piece of black walnut that I will go ahead and mill up on the planer. I won't show you that. You saw me using the planer earlier. I basically just wanted a lid that was going to contrast nicely against that ash. So I've planed this piece down. It's actually a little lighter than I thought it was going to be. I'm going to do the same thing you saw me do earlier with that piece of ash when it was still wide, and I'm going to put some fresh edges on this so I can then cut it to length, or width rather, accurately. So I'm going to size the width of the lid after I get the fresh cuts on this to the other pieces I cut, so about 4.5 inches. And the length I will get in the ballpark with the miter gauge after, and you'll see I just kind of take more passes until it fits perfectly. This lid we are going to end up bringing over to the router and cutting more rabbets on until it drops into place for the glue up. So taking a minute over here to the bandsaw. Things laser cut best around 5 millimeters I found in my machine, so I'm going pretty thin with this top piece here. Just kind of taking a sliver off that I hope will mill down to around 5 millimeters. Just taking my time again and making sure that I don't mess this up too badly. I always walk around to the other side and pull the piece through on the bandsaw. I just feel better that way. So there are my two pieces. I did the same for another piece of ash off that original cut earlier. I didn't show that on camera, sorry. But basically I just ran that piece through to get another section of ash at 5 millimeters as well. And I'm going to cut my shapes out of that. So we got the box all glued up, took all the clamps off. You can see it's looking pretty good here. The gaps aren't too bad. I think after I sand this, it's going to look pretty dang good. So told you I got this piece in the ballpark here. Now we're gonna go ahead and measure and put a line on this so that we can bring it over to the miter gauge, cut that down to size. So we'll do that real quick, and there we are back at the box. It's about the right length. So now we need to take this over to the router. I still have the same settings on from earlier, so everything should fit fine. I ran it through again to clean it up nicely, and then ended up adjusting my fence very, very slightly to get this to fit into the glue up that I had already. So see me do that here, just a slight little adjustment, run it through one more time, and then hopefully this will drop into place. And yep, nice and snug, not really any wiggle at all. That should be a real easy glue up. So before I glue it up, I'm going to bring this piece over to the laser. I'm going to throw that in there, and I made a file with some basic shapes. If you guys are interested in seeing how I did that, just let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to make an X-Tool video, but I don't want to bombard you guys with it because this is ultimately a woodworking channel. So the piece came out pretty well here, punching all my shapes out. I couldn't resist labeling the shapes as well while I was in there. Text is really fast and easy on the laser engraver. So you can see I got the rabbets all the way around this piece here, and I'm going to glue it into place. I'm really happy with how it looks so far, so let's make sure that we get a nice solid glue up and make this thing permanent. This glue up's a little less complicated than last time, less moving parts, so we go ahead and trigger clamp it into place. Try to get a few in the middle lengthwise too, just so there's not too many gaps. You can get away with quite a number of gaps when you do joinery like this. I'm not saying you should aim for gaps, but it'll still be sturdy. So over here I'm making some pieces out of a craft stick to glue into the little shapes, little handles. So I'm just using this flush trim saw, this pull saw that I have here, and kind of looking to what would be comfortable to hold, and then using that first one to mark off 3 more, because we're going to have 4 shapes that we need to make. So we'll go ahead and get those cut real quick. I like to clamp the dowel down, get you a more accurate cut. And there we have them. Back over to the laser, we ran a piece of ash in the same file. That piece of ash that I cut earlier, I actually just made the shapes slightly smaller, and I decided to make 2 of them so that I would then glue them up like this and get a double thick little piece to try to shove through the holes. It seemed to me like the pieces should be larger, or thicker rather than the holes. So I'm just putting a little drop of glue on each of these, a couple drops, and then using blue tape as clamps. For small pieces like this, you can use blue tape. It's got a little stretch to it too if you kind of pull as you wrap it over. And now it's time for some final sanding. So I'm using 180 right here, just going over everything, getting all the scorch off the top, getting all the mill marks off of everything, making all the joinery look flush and neat, and really bringing out all the nice wood grain there is to play with here. I'm spending a lot of time on these ends, making sure that all the pieces look nicely joined together. So there we have it, looking pretty good, looking pretty clean. Let's unwrap our little Christmas presents here and see how we did. Oh, they're looking pretty good. Not too much drift. That'll save me some sanding. So now it's time to bring these over to the drill press and put some holes in them for those little dowels that we cut earlier. Like an Oreo. All right, over at the drill press, I have found a bit that seems to be good for this dowel. They're basically the same thickness. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look and eyeball the depth that I want this dowel to sit at, and then I'm going to place a piece of blue tape to act as a little flag so I can guarantee that I'm going the same depth in every piece that I drill here today. So after I get this fastened, go ahead and run these through, and I can know that I'm drilling to the exact same depth in each. Nice little trick here is just look at the piece, and when the blue tape flag clears all your sawdust off your piece for you, that's when you pull back out with the bit. You can use a clamp to hold these in place if they are spinning on you. I probably should have, honestly, but I decided just to hold these. All right, just a tiny drop of glue in each one is going to be enough, and then we are going to pound these home into place. Just make sure that the final, at its final depth, the dowel is perfectly at 90 degrees. If you didn't cut these exactly at 90 degrees earlier with your handsaw, like say you have a little angle off the end, it might want to sit sideways in the hole, so just go ahead and pound it into place to get it perfect. All right, those are all squared away. Let's go ahead and sand them a little bit so that my daughter doesn't cut herself or get any splinters or anything like that. A little bit finicky here, but we're just using a little sanding block to do what we can. So now I'm taking a combination square and going about 2.5 inches from either side, and what we need to do here is punch a hole in the front somehow, or we could have done that earlier, but I prefer to do it after the fact. We need to retrieve these shapes after we drop them in, right? Or it's going to be a one-time use toy. So what I'm doing is marking basically the edge of where I want my drill bit to go in, and then I'm drawing a line across the bottom as well. I end up redrawing this line because I didn't like the height. I set the combo square differently. You can see my second line there. Now I'm just taking this bit here and making sure it lines up on both lines, and then using the brad point on this Forstner bit to really make a divot for my drill bit to grab accurately. So I'm using my hand drill for this because this didn't fit under my drill press because of the table I had on there. I would recommend a drill press if you can swing it. And I ran out of battery as soon as I started drilling this. So battery swap, and we're good to go. I should have clamped this piece down. I recommend that you do because the torque from the drill really likes to grab it, especially with these bigger drill bits. So, whoops. No big deal. We're still going. Everybody's okay. Okay, so I'm taking my straight edge. I'm just using this square as a straight edge right now and drawing a line at the tops of these circles, and then I'm going to follow that with my jigsaw and cut out a nice wide oval here. Line that up. One more mark. Good to go. So with the jigsaw, here we go. Mine's got a laser on it, which helps a little bit, but the blade does tend to drift on these, and you'll see that gets me right here. Even though my laser's lined up with the top of the hole, the blade drift got me. My camera quit on me right there for the other side, but you can see I have my hole all cut out here. So now I'm taking a couple different wood rasps and reclaiming that nice oval shape on the edge with a rounded one, and then taking a straight one to get rid of material so that it looks even and symmetrical to the eye. So after some time cleaning this up, it looks a lot better, and we are ready to sand the inside of it. You want to make sure you sand this well if a kid's going to be using it, because they're going to stick their hands in there and you can't really see all the fraying that's going on inside there from the drill bit and the jigsaw. So just make sure you sand it properly. Here we are testing the piece out. I can get them out, so I know my daughter's smaller hands will be able to get those out, no problem. One final sand, just to keep this thing really pretty. And it's time for some finish. So I'm going to be using a tried and true original wood finish for this. It is a beeswax and polymerized linseed oil based finish. It's marketed as non-toxic, safe for kids, all that stuff. It looks like liquid beeswax basically, and kind of smells that way too. I really enjoy the stuff. So if you like this video, you want to help me out, go ahead and toss it a like, and think about subscribing if you want to see anything else like this in the future. I think my content's getting better all the time, starting to figure stuff out a little more. But let me know what you want to see too, and let me know what you don't like about the videos, you know? Help me get better. Alright, just hitting the little inserts now really quickly, getting those all squared away to dry, and I'm starting to get excited because this thing looks really good. It's maybe a little overdone for what it is. But here we go, got this thing outside with some natural light. You can really see that walnut showing off the top. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. The shape sorting works for the most part, but my dark secret is I made the square too big and you can fit a couple of the other pieces through the square hole. Otherwise, they are pretty exclusive. So I hope you guys like this. I hope you stick around in the future to see what else I come up with. But yeah, have a good one, okay? Bye.